I guess what I'd say in closing is it's a, what I'd say is the road that we've, been on with this, is tough. I think it's partially because I think and I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of companies don't go into this at all. It's because once you say, which we've said, that the environment's going to be at the table when we make decisions. Now, it may not always win, but it's at the table. It's tough. Who wants to make a decision that, might in any way negatively impact the environment? I mean, that sounds crazy. But I think that is, it's living in that tension that I think is where, kind of the true greatness of that people should aspire to, and that where we're trying to aspire to, is how do we operate in a place where we're going to say, yeah, we're totally committed to the environment, and we're totally committed to making money, and we're totally committed to driving shareholder value. And I don't know that we're always going to get it right. You don't. The other thing that I think we have really also stuck to is, that it's advice that I give out to people when they talk about this process is take everything one step at a time. Our company, people self-select to be at our company in large part because they love the outdoors too. There's a tremendous passion for the environment, even if it's not spoken in the words of environmental activism. But every new effort, every new decision, every new message takes time for your people to hear and to integrate. And we have been very, very patient and cautious about making sure that each of these things that we put out there has the time and has the ability to be fully embraced and where our folks can succeed at them. The energy layoff is a great example. We're not going out and telling people tomorrow you're turning off your electricity for 3 days. We're not telling them that in hotel rooms, one of the, another big thing is, well, what about putting in CFLs in the guest rooms? What about putting CFLs in, what we said is no. We're going to start with, we're going to put CFLs in all the back of house spaces first. Let's do that first. That's the easier thing to do, where you don't have your marketing folks and your operations folks worried about what the hotel or what the environment looks like. So again, that's been one of the key things for us. Now what that comes back to is, and I think we've seen it finally, is the final concept that Jim Collins talks about is this flywheel. And what he says is that when you're on the road to doing something really well over a long period of time, which is what he defines as great, good to great, that companies tend to, they do one thing, then they do another thing well, then they do another, and it starts slowly to build on itself. And slowly you have, like a flywheel, you slowly build momentum, you slowly accelerate, all of a sudden the wheel's kind of spinning on its own. We've seen that in our company because all of a sudden, what I realize is where maybe in the early days there was a small number of people, including myself, who kind of would raise the issue of the environment in a meeting or talk about it in a development project. Now all of a sudden in every meeting, everybody in the company, no matter where they are, will say, well, we could get, we just were talking about it the other day. We're building a new project in Vail for our employees, and one of our more junior level folks in our construction company was like, well, we could get it LEED certified, and this is what it would cost, and this is what we could do, and this is coming again from the bottom up, and actually what we've done is we've said that's we're not going to on that topic we're not going to get LEED certification on every single project, but we're going to use those practices for probably the whole nature of LEEDs is something for a different conference, I guess, or a different speech, but it is incredibly gratifying to see that it's now not just like the environmental directors and groups, managers, it's not just me, it's actually everybody in the company saying, well, how can this effort, activity, or decision contribute to what you're doing? And finally, what that means is that, just like I said from the beginning, when I'm no longer there and other leaders, who may be active in this are no longer there, this whole effort is just part of the company itself. It's literally part of the fabric. It's just how we do business. It's not even, you don't think about doing business another way. And that ultimately was really the goal. The goal was to kind of weave this in, across the board. The last thing I'd say is that we sat through a recent presentation about a week ago on employee engagement. How do you get the employees in your company to become engaged? And there's tons of work that show how companies that have engaged employees always outperform companies that don't. It's not that really, it's not a radical idea. If your employees are passionate and they're willing to go the extra mile, then that typically is going to help you succeed. And quite frankly, it's often the difference between success and failure. When they rank, and this has changed dramatically over the last 5 years, when you rank the factors that lead to employee engagement, the number 3 factor right now is social responsibility. That employees, if a company is doing things that benefit something other than, or is, I guess, including social responsibility in their activities, then they, tend to feel more engaged. I think what that comes from is pride. I think people who feel pride in the company and in what they stand for and in what they're doing, because the company is such a big identity piece for everyone that you work for, that ultimately is going to lead to a greater level of passion. Other interesting fact, and I'll take some questions, is, and very uplifting, I guess, and very optimistic, is when you then say, okay, it was the number 3 overall, but now let's take what's important to different people by age group. What you see is that for the youngest group of employees right now, that topic is like number 1 or number 2 pretty consistently. Older employees, it generally doesn't rate as high. And what we're seeing is that issue is going to become more and more of a focus for the employee base because of the generations that are growing up now in a very, very different environment, a very, very different kind of mode of what's acceptable than I think what people saw or experienced kind of years back. Which I think, for me, is hard to see anything that's kind of more optimistic about the future and about I think what's possible with consumers today than something like that.